Alan, appreciate you taking the time today. How you doing? Welcome to Permissionless, and hopefully that you're having a good time, and so many amazing companies here to network with, huh?
Yeah, thank you, man. Always good to be back in New York City.
To kick things off, Alan, would love to learn a little bit more about yourself. I'm sure the viewers also would like to know a bit more about you and your background. Before diving into Everest Ventures, what kind of sparked your curiosity to want to be in this industry? Was there anything in particular? Like what was your journey? What has it kind of been like?
Yeah, so I was not I would say like an early Bitcoin OG. I was not a miner. I started actually my career doing startups in Web2. Online education, app development, e-commerce. I sold a couple companies, and I was also later on worked in private equity, running their venture and TMT book into all sort of things that's unrelated to crypto, actually, like autonomous driving, fintech, biotech, and then it was really in late 2016, out of accident, I started investing some in ICOs, and that kind of brought me into the wave. And then late 2018, decided to leave that private equity group to start EVG in Hong Kong. And the whole idea was pretty naive and simple back then. It was like, I feel like I wasn't born in the right time to, trying to start like a ByteDance or Tencent or Google equivalent. And I was like, hey, maybe this is my time, right? So out of that naive idea or vision, and we started the firm, yeah. So EVG is basically a holding company. A lot of people think, because we have the word ventures, a lot of people think we're a fund, but we're not. We are one of the larger operating group in Asia with like 250 people, different subsidiaries. So we basically, I would say, structurally functions like DCG or Consensus or Animoca, etc., except smaller, right? And yeah, so that's pretty much about us.
Nice, man. Tell me a bit more about EVG. Like, what are you guys trying to accomplish, essentially? What's your guys' mission?
Yeah, so I think for us, like the way we think about, I think like, for example, if you're a venture fund, like your way of, pushing this industry forward is by, providing the risk capital to founders who has a dream or who has a vision. Our way of thinking about, kind of like doing experiment in the industry is trying to find use cases. And for us, it's very simple. We invest R&D budget, we invest talents, we invest users in order trying to build a product, right? And that's how we started as also a publisher as well. We started a publisher to multiple GameFi projects like Sandbox, NBA Top Shops, Dapper Lab in Asia, Animoca brands, etc. So we kind of figure out how to do the distribution side first, actually, before we start acquiring engineering teams or ramping up the engineering teams. And then later on, we've built media products in Chinese language. We've built a fintech product that has 8 licenses globally between US and Asia. And we have also built our own AI labs. We have built our gaming lab that has built also gaming product. So the way we look at it is we've recently also launched a very consumer-focused chain for Asian developers because we feel like there's a huge underserved market. And so for us, like, it's just quite simple. Like, the way we experiment or trying to innovate is just by putting R&D budget, talent, time against what we want to achieve. And occasionally we'll invest in balance sheet as well into other, I would say, funds as well as LPs, or invest into other projects out of strategic reasons. But I would say primarily I spend 90% of my time just working with, 70% of the group are engineers and product managers, right? That's where I spend most of the time with.
Any use cases that maybe you can talk about that's under the EVG umbrella, things that maybe you're excited about, in the realm of, the things that you're investing into?
Yeah, I think I think the cliche thing to say, everyone is, for most of the people, is AI, right? Because I do think the whole intersection of AI and Web3 is probably not as clear as what everyone's trying to make it sound like, right? You can see maybe in long term there is a couple of directions, and then in short term there's maybe 1 or 2 ideas you can kind of fuse the technology together. But I think there's still a lot of uncertainty how that's going to play out. But we also think is one of the more inevitable trend, right? So for example, we have this product called Agent that we recently just announced EDGEN. So if you look up like our Twitter or we just drop a video, it's basically a product that uses AI to help retail users to analyze like an institutional platform, right? Because obviously institution, the advantage is you have a lot more resources to hire analysts, to create your own dashboards and buy 40 APIs and use every single platform and of all the time you need because that's covered in the management fee. But for a retail user or a normal user or even what you want to say like normies that's just about to come into crypto market, most of them actually do not have the resources. So for example, my mom will always like capture screen some sort of token being mentioned in an article, or when she saw something like in CoinMarketCap go up 40%, she always like try to screenshot and send to me. It's like, what is this, son? Right? Why you move? Oh, it's a L2. How is it different from the other project you mentioned last time, right? So I think it's really, really hard. I think today for most of the, I would say, normies to try to figure out how, what digital asset is, maybe beyond BTC. And if you think about BTC, that has already been one that I would say simplest, I would say, product to understand, but still takes a very long time. So the way to think about like that is what AI could really come in to do, because instead of a very static experience, or if you think about today's CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko, it feels very much like an MSN or Yahoo, like a portal-like platform, like click, 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 click. But with AI now, you can really make sense of everything. You can make sense of every single keyword in an article. You can make sense of what this investment firm is, just because like in our industry, we know about polychain paradigm, framework, all this great organization doesn't mean in mainstream people really understand about them. So just because we understand what parallel EVM is, we shouldn't expect everyone else to get it. So I think like that is what AI could really come in. I think a huge part for Web3 is the education part about digital asset, which is quite contrarian, right? Because most people think about like Web3 trying to solve the centralization of AI, but we're just thinking it's like opposite. We should just use AI to first preach about in our industry. So I think like that is one of the, I would say, examples of like how we really think about how to fuse the technology better in order to encourage more adoption. Because I think when we think about use case, like the number one criteria we think about is always like what is going to drive more people into this industry, right?
One thing I want to ask you that I think might be interesting for a lot of people is, so we don't always think about where the industry is kind of propagating in other regions. Like, I mean, we kind of do. We talk about Europe, we talk about, the UAE, and sometimes we talk about Singapore, we talk about the US, but just Asia at large, I think, has quite an interesting opportunity in terms of where they're taking a foothold when it comes to things like AI and Web3, even versus the US, where the regulatory environment over the last few years was really tough, and now in the last 6 to 9 months, it's just completely turned around, and all the companies want to come back to the US. But I'm just curious from your perspective, if you've seen a more opportunistic perspective to have an AI or Web3 company in Asia right now, or how that maybe contrasts with the environment here in the US. Like, what's that dichotomy kind of look like?
You mean from technology perspective or from a startup perspective? Maybe both. Okay, cool. I think in Asia, like if you look at I think if we look at broadly, even we zoom out from Web3, you look at like, for example, I think in the last probably period of time, people are very familiar with like apps like DeepSeek or Magnus AI or etc. If you look at most of the Asian model, the proposition is very, very simple. It's like we'll probably provide something that's 85%, 80%, 90% of the, in terms of powerfulness compared to Gemini or Grok or the American AI, but at 25% of the cost. I think that has historically been Asia's value proposition. If you think about phone, you think about chips, if you think about most of the stuff Asian provide is this incredibly high, CP ratio, right, or price and reward ratio. So, and I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that too. And I think generally, just because the cost is a lot cheaper for development, for R&D, for really talented engineer. I always tell people, it's like, imagine like a FANG grade engineer in Asia, in China, like who worked in Tencent, Alibaba, the equivalent of FANGs in Asia. They will cost probably about 30% the cost, or 25% the cost of what you pay in Silicon Valley, right? But you can argue they're as good. They're identical, basically. So I think that will allow a lot of iteration to happen over products. And that's why I think if you think about, for example, consumer adoption on the other end, historically, why Asia always have an edge, right? Like in the last, I would say 5, 6, 7 years, Asia really leads in every single category in terms of consumer adoptions, right? Like regardless, it's TikTok, it's Shein, it's all the major, I would say, applications, and I think there's a reason to it. It's just because your high velocity of iterations, right? Anyone that's built a product knows that if I can iterate my product 40 times, that means I can listen to the customer feedback and self-correct 40 times. If you want to do it 10 times, I'm almost guaranteed to win, right? In a very long-term perspective. So I think that's what Asia has a unique advantage of. But obviously, I think startups in Asia face a lot more challenges in general. Like I wrote many articles about the specific, I would say, like terrain of Asia. Like there is less risk capital in general, right? Like America, you have probably like 15, 16, $1 billion fund. Asia has one maybe or a zero. So in general, there's less risk capital in the ecosystem. There's obviously, I think, a lot more in terms of secondary market liquidity, a lot more exchanges, a lot more retail traders. So I think the market looks a little bit different in general. But I think the whole consumer adoption and the whole deregulation is going to really happen very, very differently. So for example, when I think about deregulation, like after Trump, after all this, the most notable thing you saw is the institution-related acts or bills being passed in America. But in Asia, what's happening in the last couple of months is you will see, for example, in Taiwan, you see the largest telecom company now launching their own crypto exchanges. Them alone will probably quadruple or triple the population of token holders in Taiwan alone. The largest e-broker, like Robinhood equivalent of Hong Kong, just also announced their crypto servicing. So now in every single metro and MTR, you will be able to see their ads. So that alone is going to probably triple or quadruple the population of the token holder in Hong Kong. And Japan is lowering the individual capital gain tax from 55% to 20%. So I think, Vietnam in about 20 days from now is going to announce their license to probably 4 or 5 license. So I think the whole wave is going to be very, very different. The deregulation, when it happens here, means BlackRock, means Wall Streets. In Asia, that means a lot more individual users and retail is going to start coming in and becoming token holders. Then the question is like, how could they make sense of the market? And how can we have the right content or the right product that will be able to appeal to them and convert them into also like Web3 or on-chain users, right? And I think that is the unique opportunity that's going to be, I think pretty large in terms of TAM in the next probably 24 to 36 months in Asia specifically.
Very interesting. I also want to ask you about, I guess, the future of AI, maybe where we're going here. It seems to be something that over the last couple of years has just continued to accelerate and get better and better and better. Starting out with taking pictures and giving people like extra limbs and fingers and looking silly, to now being like so photorealistic and the videos are incredible, like the generative side of the space as well as the analytical side and what it can do, and now AI agents starting to come out and hyper specialize. Pretty soon, I'm sure these AIs are going to be building the AIs themselves, and we'll probably go parabolic. But curious, when you're looking at these companies and you're seeing these different startups, like, does it kind of help paint a picture for you of maybe where the space might be heading in terms of AI? Like, is it something that is of concern that we should be focused on because it might disrupt markets around the world, jobs around the world, different business models, or is it something that you think will just accelerate economies and make everyone far more successful, more efficient, more streamlined? I mean, because there's different ways to kind of look at this. I'm just curious your philosophy and perspective on this.
Yeah, I think every business, or I would say maybe 90%, maybe not every, maybe 90% of the business, I think within the next 5 years or so, could be completely, I would say, impact by AI, and would have to rewire some of their business logic and how the user journey looks like, how the economic looks like. And you can already tell from the recent acquisition that's already happening. You saw Wix just buy a new company that basically was a one-man team. They pay $80 million for the startups and trying to fuse that into their product stacks, right? And that's fundamentally because now you can really use platforms to build simple website, without actual coding. You can do that. Design. You can use Lovable. There's so many different tools. I think that we every single one of us use like on the daily basis already, and then also I think it's shipping a new type of behavior as well. I think there's going to be some transition period. What I mean by that is, you think about like some platform is very free prompt based, right? So you write whatever prompt. If you know how to compose, you're going to do well, right? You can almost think about like that referencing like in the early days of operating system like Linux, right? So basically, like if you know how to code, if you know how to use APIs, if you know how to compose on a certain ways, then it could be super powerful. And there's very little restriction or limitation. But there is still, platforms, operating system that is needed for some more preset prompts or more easier, like a hybrid, Web2 UI combined with the AI engine in the back end, so that normal people can click around, because not everyone should be assumed that they know how to exactly go through this process. So I think there need to be also like a user friendliness that's added to it. And then I think there will be more things that where AI kind of blend in the back end. Actually, you might be looking at the charts, but you might not know it's actually AI reading the chart and giving you the signal. So where in that case, it's a very 100% the behavior you're already familiar with. It's not changing your behavior or journey. It's just the AI is in the back end making things, providing things at a much higher velocity or lower cost or higher accuracy. So I think it's all going to come from different shapes and form. But I think the big opportunity, I think what everybody agree from both my Web2 friends or the community in Web2 or all the way to Web3 is that we think the infra period is pretty much is going to be really hard for startups. Like the world can only accommodate so many foundation models. It takes a lot of capex. You basically need to compete on computations. You need to compete on data. You need to compete on the model efficiency on a couple of things where bigger company have like a much bigger advantage. So I think what really is going to come down in the next 3 to 5 years is teams that can really focus on building high-value, verticalized applications using AI to solve unique pain points. I think this kind of startup is going to have a very high ARR per employee ratio, or going to have very, very good P&L, and should have pretty good, I would say, LTV to CAC ratio in general. So I think, and you can also start to see even in Silicon Valley, the good verticalized AI application companies now being valued at 50 times PS, 70 times PS, 100 times PS, almost higher than a lot of, I would say, crypto tokens in general. So I think that is really has a lot of future. And but I also think that building an AI, so we've been building, for example, ourselves. We have a team of about 35 engineers in that AI lab, has been building for 7-8 months. It is a process where you will constantly hit a wall. And then you're like, hey, it's not progressing, it's stuck. And then you have to kind of like find 10, 15 different ways of trying to go around and make a breakthrough. It's not always linear. It's actually a very, very, I would say, pretty tough process of trying to figure out different ways to structure data, different way to think about the training, the model, and etc. So I do think it's like a very long-term and deep commitment you need to be willing to put. Otherwise, I think a lot of this project will just going to be end up as a pure wrapper. Or they're going to end up as just something that I think is like very AI narrative play, which is, fine, but it's just, I think, would not realize that full potential. Yeah.
Interesting. And what brings you to Permissionless? Are you looking for just to connect with people, network, make more connections? Or are you looking for partners, looking for other companies, and maybe EVG wants to acquire at some point or invest in? I know you're speaking as well. What's your agenda while you're here?
No, Jason is a good friend. So when he asked me to speak, it's like it's New York City. So I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm coming. I come back to New York City probably like 3 times a year. Honestly, one of my favorite cities in the world. I live in Hong Kong. I always consider Hong Kong as the closest thing to New York City. Not quite there, but probably the closest in terms of style and culture. And I'm always amazed by New York's like diversity and the people in it. And obviously you can tell just by the sheer amount of talent that's moved here, right? Like, with all the friends moving from Miami all the way out, also with like Robinson from Momo yesterday, he moved up from Miami all the way up to New York City. We have a lot of friends moving from Silicon Valley to New York City. So I think it's really becoming that crypto hub, and it's good to see all the old friends and also meet some new ones. I honestly don't come here with a specific agenda, but it's just good to just catch up with all the core community and everybody and all the great builders and founders. And I think especially in this type of market, it matters, right? Sometimes it's just like encouragement to each other, just like, hey, you have not died yet? Good. Let's keep grinding, right? Sometimes it's a little bit of that, pat in the back as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, the great thing about these events is you got to remind everyone that we're all in this together and that we're not all over the world doing our own thing. Like we are a community and an ecosystem. And so you get everyone here and you see everyone so happy and excited and so many new bonds and connections being formed. I think is so good for this space because it just helps elevate the level of innovation and really keep that fuel going, especially when there's bad times and market is bad and no one wants to work, but you keep working anyways. So I think all of this stuff is really important. Very special about Web3 as well. Where can people go to learn more about EVG if they want to get in touch with you guys? Do you guys have socials? Do you have an online presence? Where would you send people?
Yeah, I mean, very welcome you to follow our, for example, like Twitter X page. It's called hashtag EVGHQ. And then it kind of like covers a lot of our, I think, product development, shipping, or events. We also are known for hosting a lot of events. For example, we have like 14 coming up in second half across Asia, across like 9 countries. So if you hope to join one of them, just hit me up as well on Twitter, or I think in general you can follow our products like Agent, EDGN, or like our new chain that we just announced for Asia is called T-Rex, right? So I think, yeah, there's a bunch you can find us on social, send us emails. Always happy to chat and happy to explore ways to work together. Yeah.
Want to do a quick little rapid fire session for fun here? I'll ask you a couple fun questions and then just give me your response, just from the top of your head, whatever comes to mind. The first one is, do you have a favorite Web3 personality in the space right now?
Well, I mean, you have to, I do know Arthur Hayes pretty well. I think Arthur is one of my favorite guys. A lot of realness, a lot of candidness, and just fun, right? Just a fun guy and smart guy. An OG I respect, yeah.
Is there any Web3 company, project, startup that you're super optimistic about or that you really like that thinks is making a big impact right now?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think each category, there's a lot of project to watch out for. Despite maybe, I think, whatever that's happening in the token market currently, most of altcoins, I would say, bleeding or suffering. But I think a lot of them are doing like great works in the market. I think if you look at like BTC ecosystem, like Stack is doing amazing in it, right? If you look at the recent trend in terms of the SBTC wraps, and I was with Munib like a couple of days ago. It was their recent technical upgrade was super amazing, and there are a lot of good things coming up. So I think they're really trending up in the whole BTC Fi ecosystem. If you look at like the EVM world, I think like secretly Arbitrum has been doing a lot of good work, right? They partner with some of the biggest financial institutions. A lot of like top chains is being launched there. I think there is going to be, they're really everywhere at this moment of time, right? And if you look at like, for example, like the whole NFT space, I think like what Luca is doing with like Pudgy, with like Pango is really interesting, unique. He's figuring out a new way of building community as well. I think he's almost trying to also figure out like this new form of meme coin, new form of community, combining that also with Web2 adoptions. I think his experiments are pretty novel too. So I think basically like if you look across just each sector, I think maybe like you think about a year ago when the market is super hot, like in BTC alone, there's like 100 projects you can name. And then today, not so much, right? Like a lot of them has died out, a lot of them has give up. And then you can tell like who is still iterating, who is still driving progress forward. And then I think that's all that matters. Like a year ago or 18 months ago, you can name probably about like the L2 raise, you can think about maybe 20 projects. And now you can really clearly tell who is shipping, who is constantly building, right? And I think that's like, from my mind, it's like the easiest thing in terms of as a builder myself, to look at. It's like, I'll just look at what you ship, right? Like if you're not shipping, then regardless your narrative or short-term pricing, anything, it doesn't really matter in a much longer time. But I think the good thing is, like, I think we do have a lot of really fundamental builder that are still shipping products, shipping progress, creating distributions, and I think that is, even with, like, you look at RWA, you look at a lot of these things. Historically, there's been a lot of projects that could not find the mods, and now there's projects, I think, coming with pretty interesting angles. Like, look at Uranium Digital, right? Like, very unique angles. There's something that's not accessible in traditional, I would say, finance. And I think those are the things that are going to really differentiate the industry and create unique experience of. Like, I just led around into this, like, company that's trying to build a bottom-up, community-centric ticketing platform to challenge Live Nation. And if you think about Live Nation, it makes $25 billion a year, and yet it's the most hated company in the earth, right? By everybody. That costs about $40 billion in terms of deadweight losses every year. So I think, why can Web3 do something about it, right? I think those are the unique problem and challenges you want to see founders going afterwards. And when you see one of those, like, always, I think you got to be bullish, because even they have a 10% chance to be successful, they're dangerous, right? They could create a huge outcome. And I think that was, in general, and I think there's a lot, right?
There's a lot of great companies out there, great projects doing a lot of amazing things. So it's always hard to pick one. Alt season 2025. Is this something that's still on the table, you think, in your opinion, or has this passed us this cycle? Where are we at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a trader. I'm more like a product builder. But I guess, like, judging from what we've seen from Asia, I think the Asian community is ready for token season almost any time soon right now. I think obviously the BTC dominance in short term is still pretty high, and probably will still peak a little bit more. Will they go to 70%, and then we see all season rotation? I don't know, right? But I think the market is ready. I think if you look at, like, I will much, I can imagine if I'm a retail investor, or even for myself, I'm much rather buying tokens right now than a year ago. I mean, a lot more reasonably priced. A year ago, I think a lot of these tokens was built on hype, but not substance. I think now you really see a lot more substance being shipped, and a lot more thing. Basically, every single time when this project ship is a process of de-risking for holders, right? So I think that means a lot of project has de-risk, and it's gotten cheaper. So I think it is a good time. Like, I would suspect all the fund manager, all the whales, individuals, like, should be looking at adding something to their bags if they're not already have a bag. So I think the market is ready. I think we could see something probably in Q4. We'll see once the macro stabilize a little bit. I think one thing in crypto is, like, it's pretty tough. It's just like there's so many macro factors that is affecting us all the time. And as a founder, as a project, sometimes, like, I think a lot of people blame founders and say, hey, why your token is down? Why certain things not going the way? We expecting this much. Why you come up short? But I mean, if you look at reality, is a founder and the team can only control maybe 40-50% of all factors, right? There's about 50% you cannot really control what Trump wanted to during his bowel movement, right? Like, so you cannot control what's happening in Middle East. So I think there's a lot of things you cannot control, but I personally think so. I think there's going to be a lot of, like, liquidity, as I mentioned, a lot of new users going to come in the next 18 months. So I think we can see a pretty good altcoin season maybe for a year or so. And I also fundamentally believe that altcoin season is needed for crypto. Because otherwise, like, if this industry want to continue to grow, it cannot be just Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is what inspired us all to start this journey. But we need to continue to evolve. Like, ultimately, I think if you think from 5 years perspective, we will not be mainstream if we cannot really show people that Web3 application and Web3 use case can be impacting your cousins, everyday life. And then only when we can do that, then people is going to be like, hey, this is not pure speculation. It's actually an innovation, right? And I think if you look at AI, that's what AI has accomplished. Hopefully that's where Web3 will go to. That means almost for that to happen, we will have to have a very good altcoin season. So, yeah.
All right, Alan, appreciate the talk, man. This has been fantastic. I love the conversation. Keep up all the great work with EVG. Let me know how things are going in the near future here as you continue out your roadmap in 2025. Would love to do this again, have another episode together. Be a lot of fun. But yeah, keep me posted in the meantime. Enjoy your time at Permissionless. Enjoy your talk as well. And we'll be in touch. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, man. Take care.